All right. So this began this week. Had a Biden moment. This week, we pick up with vaYiqra, which is Leviticus in English, chapter 19, verse 34. Now, I heard a joke yesterday, which I hope we don't get kicked off the air for this. It was on YouTube, so we shouldn't get in trouble, but it was so funny. And I'm going to use it on everybody I know, but I'm going to let you guys in on it. I'm going to use it on you, but I'm going to let everyone in on it. It was some parody on Donald Trump doing Donald Trump said he was going to put out some kind of proof that he was innocent or something like that. And it said it was on, so I turned it on to see what it was, and it was a parody. It wasn't really Donald Trump doing this. And so there was a guy dressed up like Donald Trump, and he was acting like Donald Trump. I didn't think he sounded anything like Donald Trump. He wasn't doing his lips right either. So it was really kind of a bad parody, but I think that was actually part of it. But anyway, so they had these people in the audience asking these fake questions, so that he could tell his jokes. And so they asked him about President Biden, and he said, acting like Donald Trump, he said, Biden's so old that they've discontinued his blood type. I don't think anything else he said was funny, but that would have been funny about Donald Trump. I mean, anybody that's old, that's funny. Anyway, let's get started. I like old jokes. Okay, so we're starting with 34. Usually I back up and read what led up to that, which I should. So in 33, my translation was, and because a proselyte will dwell with you in your land, you shall not oppress him with it. What was the it? Being a proselyte. So you will not oppress him because he's a proselyte, or with the fact that he's a proselyte. That's the it. So then verse 34, in a very literal translation, as native from you he will be. To you, the stranger that dwell with you and love you, to he, as from he you, for strangers were you in land Mitzrayim, which is Egypt if you don't know. And then it ends with, I, Yahweh, God you. So I am Yahweh, your God, is how we would say that. So it's starting off with Ke'es Rach, which is native, as in like a native tree, trees that are native to this particular land. You could say that there are certain types of olive trees that are native to Israel, partially because there are very few other places on the planet where those particular olive trees will actually grow. We had some friends that live somewhere out around here where we are, or maybe Smithfield was, but they wanted to plant olive trees, and so they went to this company that they figure out what your soil is like and what your climate is like where you are, because are you down south where it's hot, or are you up north where it doesn't get particularly hot, but it'll get too cold? Because if you plant a tree that can't grow in the cold, well, then you don't want to be buying a tree for your backyard in Pennsylvania. That's not going to, it's going to die the first time we have a winter. And same thing down here. If you have a tree that's going to not endure the hot very well, then you don't want to buy that tree and plant it, because it'll die on the first hot summer that you have down here, which we have pretty much every year. So that was the thing that this website did, was figure out what trees would grow very well in your area. And as it turns out, those olive trees that are basically native to Israel will grow very well right here in Bastrop. And that's because we're on the same line on the longitude, latitude thing as Israel, and we essentially get the same weather that they get. So they planted their olive trees from Israel. But you get what I'm saying here, the native plant. It could be any plant. So something that is from this particular area, that you generally only find it in that area, does not mean that you won't find it somewhere else. Just because Israel is the native land of the Jews does not mean that that's the only place you're going to find Jews, right? But we aren't talking specifically about the land of Israel, because this is the law given by God to the children of Israel that they'll live by in that land where they live. So it is specific to Israel, though, of course, there are going to be exceptions, as I just said. Jews are going to live other places, places other than Israel. All right, so it's not transplanted. It's native to your area, to your soil, to your people. Okay, and so our next word is mikem, from you. So it's now the last word ke is rach. The ke was added to as rach, so that's as or like. And then our next word after that is mi kem, kem or chem, if it doesn't have the mem in front of it, you. So it's as native from you. So it's as if whatever this is that we're about to talk about, he hasn't made this clear yet. We're only on the second word, right? We don't have the whole sentence yet. But at this point, we're being told that something is going to be as if it's native to you. Something as if, for instance, if we're speaking about Jewish people from the land of Israel, it's going to be as if we're talking about people, which of course we are, or will be, these people, it's going to be as if they came from you. In other words, as if they're Jews from Israel. All right, so then it goes yiyeh, which we like to translate it will be. So we can put this part of it together. It will be as if they are native from you or from among you. And so then we go on to our next word, which is hager. So what they're going to do is, now you know what is going to be native. The hager is going to be as if they are native from among you, which is kind of an oxymoron, because if you know what the word hager means, that means stranger, sojourner, foreigner. So it's going to be as if this foreigner actually is one of you, as if they were born and raised in Israel from Jewish parenthood. It's going to be as if this foreigner is that. You follow? But this is an interesting word, and there have been some scholars who have argued about it. I haven't read much on this argument, but I have run across it. And because it struck me funny that this person who was arguing against it was saying what they were saying, because they're, as far as I was concerned, they had no foundation for their argument. But what the person was saying is, when the Septuagint was translated, they used the wrong word, because that word just shouldn't have been used here. He had no argument, just that he didn't think it should be done that way. At least I think it was a he. It could have been a she, could have been a we, them, or whatever. I mean, the person did not give their pronouns. So I don't know. What do you do when they don't give you your pronouns? Do you get in trouble because you don't know them? I don't know. Anyway, but this is a stranger, and they said that the word used in the Septuagint was wrong. Really? Everything else is right, but that one word is wrong. Come on, get over yourself. The word that they used in place of ger, which is the root, hager, is the sojourner. I couldn't think of an English word. The sojourner, the visitor. And the word that the translators, when they translated into Hebrew into Greek, the word they chose to use was proselutos, proselyte. I'm absolutely positive that's the right word, because when you start looking up proselyte, I have a program where I can pull up the entire Septuagint and I can type in proselutos in that program, and it'll pull up every single occurrence of that word. You may have to back off. Lutos can be luton, it can be lutai. There's all of these endings. You generally have to take the ending off. Maybe just put the basic form of the word in there. Then by doing that, you find a whole lot more occurrences of the word, because depending on how it's used in a sentence, it'll be spelled differently. I mean, it could show up in the same sentence 4 or 5 times and be spelled 4 or 5 different ways. And that's on purpose, because in Greek and Hebrew both, there's things that you add to the front and the ending. In Hebrew, there's also things in the middle. I can't think of a time when you do that in Greek, but there probably is. Sure as I say there's not, there will be. But off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of any example where you put something in the middle of a Greek word, except to the degree when you're connecting words together, then something happens in the middle, but that's not the same thing I'm talking about. So proselyte, and it's very important that we understand what a proselyte is. A proselyte is a convert. A proselyte is somebody who has heard your religious message. Doesn't matter if that religious message is your message on climate change, because there is a religion in climate change. When you are unwilling, when you're willing to say America and Europe has to be carbon free by so and so date, and you don't care that the rest of the world's not even trying, and you don't say, hey, they have to be as well, you are a religious fanatic. And so if somebody is converting into your climate change religion, now see, just because you believe in climate change and that we ought to take care of our planet does not make you religious. It doesn't, because I believe in fixing the planet. I believe in being responsible with our planet and not destroying it. So I believe in that. I'm just not religious about it, right? The ones who basically are pushing a narrative and don't care about the fact that they're leaving all this other stuff out. Like, they want to be carbon free, but by God, no nuclear energy, which is carbon free. When it comes down to the point where you have to say only believe, you are a religious fanatic. And there's something wrong with your religion, no matter what it is. Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, climateism, whatever it is, if you get down to a point where you only have to believe, even though there's all of these conflicts in your belief, then you're a religious fanatic, and there's something wrong with at least your view of that religion. So the proselyte is somebody who is in the process of converting over to that religion, whether it is Judaism, Christianity, climatism. Well, there's got to be other isms that I'm not thinking of that can become a religion, and the people who are following the religious part of it are the proselytes. Now, once you have made your conversion to that religion, regardless of what it is, if you have accepted the Torah, the authority of God over you is to accept the Torah and live by it, not to just say, well, I accept it, but I'm not going to live by it. But you accept it and you live by it. whether it's climate change, Judaism, Christianity, the Muslim religion, makes no difference. When you get to the point where you literally have done that, you've learned what you need to know, and you're doing what is in line with that religion, you're now a part of that religion. So if you are born and raised in Italy and you didn't know anything about Judaism until you were 60 years old, but you've studied it out, you've done everything that's required, and you immerse in water is what we do. Some Christian organizations do it that way. They don't all do it for the same reason, so you can't lump them all together with this idea. But once you've done that, then you have this 60-year-old Italian has now become a Jew, biblically speaking. Now, there are Jews that would argue against that because they think that it's a bloodline, and that's really hysterical for somebody who is as white as I am to say that they are Jewish through a bloodline, because the Jews of the Bible were not like this. They were not white. Anyway, but I personally do have the Levitical blood in my body, and according to the what's that called, where the DNA profile, I have more Levitical blood than any other. How interesting is that? Look how white I am. So maybe that's what they're leaning on. I don't know. But we're talking about what a proselyte is. A proselyte is somebody who is in the process of converting over to this religion. And then the next word is Hagar. So we had Hager, now we have Hagar. And they're put in the Hebrew dictionary and given two different numbers. The Hager is given 1616 and Hagar is given the number 1481, and they're the same word. Exact same spelling, by the way. Now, if one had had an aleph and one had had a ayin, and they just sounded like the same word, that would be different. But no, these two words are spelled exactly the same way. And just because you pronounce your vowel sound differently does not make that a new word. But they say under 1481 to turn aside from the way, hence to turn aside to anyone, to tarry anywhere as a sojourner and stranger, to sojourn, used of individuals. Of course, in a negative sense, they use it for fear because you're turning away because you're scared, right? They're literally the same word, but the meanings are correct. The first one is just saying sojourner, stranger, foreigner, person living out of his own country, and then they expand this idea of this same word by saying turn aside from the way, hence to turn aside to anyone or maybe anywhere, probably would have been a better word, to tarry anywhere as a sojourner and a stranger. So all of this is pointing to this one word meaning all of this. But notice it's one word being said two times in a row. So you know what the Hebrew grammar is here, right? This is saying this is very important. This gives it emphasis because they didn't have explanation points in the Hebrew language back in those days. I have not actually at this point run across one for modern Hebrew, but this is how we did it. We said the word twice. Or you would say this two different words that had very similar meanings. Fetch and catch, right? They're similar. That would give whatever that sentence, however that's used in the sentence, that would give it more emphasis. So this is done for emphasis, is all I'm trying to tell you. Then it says etchem, which we would translate in English with you. No big deal there, right? Then it says ve'ahavta, and love you. Aha. This is love. Lost my word. There it is. To love, to desire, to breathe after anyone. The signification of breathing after, hence of longing. Used of a friend,